Have you ever stopped to wonder where our ideas really come from? I mean, really. We tend to think of knowledge as this thing we build brick by brick, but what if the true story is, well, a whole lot weirder and more secret than we could ever imagine? Let's get into it.
Let me ask you something. Think about the last big decision you made. Maybe what to buy or who to vote for. Do you feel like you were totally in the driver's seat? Or could something else have been pulling the strings without you even noticing?
Well, it turns out our minds are surprisingly easy to influence. Take something called the framing effect. It's one of the most powerful biases out there. It basically means that the way information is presented to you can completely change your decision, even if the facts are identical. For sure, a surgery with a 90% survival rate feels a whole lot better than one with a 10% mortality rate, doesn't it? Same exact odds, totally different feeling. Our perception is just not objective.
And what's really wild is that this vulnerability actually changes as we get older. Research shows that we become more susceptible to framing as we age, and that has huge implications, especially for older adults who are making these critical decisions about their health or their finances. How things are worded can literally nudge them in a direction that might not be what's best for them. The point is, our thinking is always being shaped.
Okay, so that's how our own minds can get tripped up. But what about the big picture, our collective knowledge? Let's zoom way, way out, from a single choice to a massive cosmic system. A system that suggests something radical. What if all knowledge wasn't slowly discovered, but was just revealed, all at once in one incredible flash?
This pretty provocative idea comes to us from a 19th century mystic, Helena Blavatsky. In her huge work, The Secret Doctrine, she basically claims that the entire history of the cosmos wasn't figured out by us, but was received from ancient hidden masters. And in her version of the story, the figures that are often the villains, the rebels who brought fire and intellect, they're actually the heroes. They're the ones who saved us and made us conscious.
And Blavatsky's system? It's nothing short of an epic. Seriously, she describes humanity evolving through these immense cycles she calls root races, living on lost continents like Lemuria and Atlantis. We're talking about a journey from ethereal, ghost-like beings to giants with psychic powers, all the way down to us, the fifth race. In a model like this, knowledge isn't something you find. It's a single, unchanging revelation passed down from the very beginning of time.
But, of course, that's not the only game in town. Let's pivot to a completely different model for where knowledge comes from. What if, instead of one big secret reveal, wisdom is something that's built by a community, slowly, piece by piece, through thousands of years of argument and debate?
And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the revelatory model, a fixed truth, handed down from a single authoritative source. But on the other side, you have the interpretive model. You see this perfectly in the work of the Talmudic sages, where knowledge is treated as this living, breathing thing that grows and changes through constant questioning.
Yeah, at the very heart of this interpretive tradition is this really powerful dual idea. You've got the written Torah, that's the fixed text, the eternal truths that don't change. But then you've got the oral Torah, which is basically the centuries-long conversation about that text. It's this dynamic process of interpretation that keeps the whole thing alive and relevant for new times and new problems.
And this isn't just some abstract theory, it's a tradition built by real people over centuries. You have figures like Judah Hanussi, Rashi, Maimonides. They weren't just passing along old info, they were organizing it, arguing with it, adding their own commentaries. They were building on the work of those who came before, creating this incredible chain of wisdom that links ancient law directly to modern ethics. So we've got these two totally different models, right? One that's revealed from on high, and another that's built from the ground up by a community. But how do we make sense of all this? Well, it turns out there's a really powerful tool for that, a way to see the hidden architecture behind any system of belief. This is the core idea of something called the sociology of knowledge. And what it's really saying, in plain English, is that no idea, no matter how brilliant or divine it might seem, just pops into existence out of nowhere. If you really want to understand an idea, you have to understand the social world, the historical moment that it came from.
We can actually break it down into three pretty simple steps. First, an idea shows up. Then, the context of its time, the politics, the technology, the culture, it all shapes how that idea is understood. And finally, as it gets passed down from person to person, generation to generation, it keeps changing and evolving. Every idea has a social life.
And here's the kicker. This way of looking for the hidden social story, it doesn't just apply to these grand spiritual traditions. It applies to absolutely everything.
In fact, this framework is so powerful, it can help us understand not just these huge cosmic revelations, but also something as seemingly simple and straightforward as the traditions of a world-famous golf tournament.
Now, really, check this out. The Masters tournament was never even supposed to happen. The original plan for that land at Augusta National was a massive, fancy hotel. But then, a chain of historical accidents completely derailed it. First, a hurricane in Florida wiped out the developer's finances. Then, the 1929 stock market crash finished the job. The golf course was just a plan B. So all those traditions we see today, they weren't inevitable. They were literally forged by the social and economic chaos of their time.
So, after all that, after looking at our own brains, at cosmic secrets, ancient traditions, and even golf, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to take away from this whole secret history of ideas?
I think the most important thing is this. No idea exists in a vacuum. It just doesn't. Whether it's a spiritual doctrine from hidden masters, a legal code built by generations of scholars, or a sporting event shaped by a hurricane, every single belief system has a social story. It has a context. It has a history.
And that brings us to one last really big question. Realizing that every idea is a product of its time, well, that doesn't make them wrong. It just makes them profoundly human. So if every single idea has a hidden history, if no knowledge is totally pure and untouched by the world it came from, how do we navigate all that? How do we choose what to believe? That's the question I want to leave you with.